The bus didn't just crash, it came apart like a rotten peach. 1 minute I was half dozing, lulled by the hum of the engine and the stale smell of sweat and antiseptic. The next the world was a screaming, twisting metal bitch. The sound was a shotgun blast of shearing steel and shattering glass. My head snapped forward, the seatbelt catching me in a brutal hug as we left the rain-slicked asphalt, did a slow, fucking horrifying barrel roll, and came to a rest on our side in a ditch. Silence, thick and heavy, broken only by the pinging of the engine and the drip of fluids I didn't want to identify. Then, the moaning started. I was Deputy Miller, and this was my own personal hell. A prison transport, a bus full of the worst bad mojo the state had to offer, and now we were having a yard sale in the middle of bumfuck-nowhere, West Virginia. My partner, Rollins, was slumped beside me, a nasty gash on his forehead leaking crimson down his face. He was out cold. The cage separating us from the prisoners was bent, the main door jammed shut. For a second, I felt a surge of relief. They were still locked in. That's when I saw him. The reason for this whole shitshow. Silas Vane. He wasn't trying the door. He was just sitting there, cuffed and chained, looking right at me through the twisted bars. His eyes were the color of a dead lake, and he had a smile on his face that had no business being there. It wasn't a smile of panic or relief. It was a smile of invitation. "Deputy," he said, his voice a dry rustle, like leaves over bone. "The door, if you please." I fumbled for my sidearm. "Shut your mouth, Vane. Help is on the way." It was a lie. The radio was a sparking mess of wires. His smile widened. "I don't think it is." A metallic crack from the back of the bus made me jump. One of the other prisoners, a mountain of a man named Jessup, had ripped his seat bracket from the floor. He started beating it against the window next to him. The safety glass webbed, then burst outwards. Game over. They spilled out into the rainy night. Jessup, 2 other meatheads whose sheets I'd barely scanned, and a wiry, twitchy guy who moved like a spider. 7 in total, including Vane. My blood went cold. I drew my Glock, aiming it through the bars. "Stay right there. Don't fucking move." Jessup just laughed, a sound like gravel in a blender. He held up his cuffed hands. "Gonna shoot us all, Deputy. Do it. Better than going back to that hole." My finger trembled on the trigger. He was right. I couldn't mow them down in cold blood. As I hesitated, they vanished into the tree line, the shadows swallowing them whole. All except Silas Vane. He remained in his seat, serene as a saint. "Aren't you going with them?" I snarled, my heart trying to punch its way out of my chest. "Their path is mundane," he whispered. "Mine is elsewhere, but I require an escort." A fresh wave of terror washed over me. He wasn't just a murderer. His file was a blacked-out mess, words like the cult and desecration peppered throughout. The feds had been cagey, telling us just to get him from point A to point B and ask no questions. That's when the first scream ripped through the woods. It wasn't a scream of triumph or pain. It was pure, undiluted terror. It cut off with a wet, final sound that made my balls shrink up inside me. "What was that?" I yelled at Vane. He closed his eyes, as if savoring a fine wine. "The woods are hungry tonight, Deputy." Another scream, closer this time. This one was the twitchy guy. It was followed by a series of sharp, cracking sounds, like branches snapping. Or bones. This was bad. This was some backwoods, deliverance-level bad juju. Rollins groaned, starting to come around. "Miller, what the hell? We gotta go. Now," I said, fumbling with my seatbelt. The bus was a death trap. We had to get to the road, flag down a car, anything. I kicked at the windshield until it popped out, and we scrambled through, landing in the muddy ditch. The rain was coming down harder now, a cold, needle-sharp drizzle. The woods were a wall of blackness, and from within, we heard it, a low, guttural clicking, like a giant insect was gargling rocks. "What in God's name is that?" Rollins whispered, his face pale. "Nothing of God's," a voice said from behind us. We spun around. Silas Vane was standing there, free of his cuffs. They lay on the ground at his feet, the metal not bent, but melted, like wax. "How did you?" I raised my gun. "The things that walk these hills care little for man's trinkets, Deputy," Vane said, his dead lake eyes gleaming. "They are older. They answer to older calls." The clicking got louder, coming from multiple directions now. Something moved in the trees. It was fast, a blur of pallid, slick flesh that moved on too many limbs. It wasn't an animal. It wasn't human. "They've been summoned," Vane said, almost conversationally. A blood debt, paid in souls. Those men were the first offering, but they are impatient. They crave the main course. He was looking at me. A branch snapped to our left. Rollins, brave, stupid Rollins, charged towards the sound, his own gun drawn. Police, freeze, you son of a bitch. The thing that unfolded itself from the shadows was a nightmare. It was tall, skeletally thin, with arms that reached its knees, ending in long, bony fingers that scraped the ground. Its head was a hairless, elongated oval, with no eyes, just deep, black pits. Its mouth was a vertical slit that opened to reveal rows of needle-like teeth. It let out that same horrific clicking sound, now a deafening rattle. Rollins fired. 3 shots, center mass. The thing jerked with each impact, black ichor spraying from the wounds, but it didn't fall. It just tilted its head and lunged. Its movement was all wrong, a skittering, joint-popping lope. It was on him before he could fire again. Those long fingers wrapped around his head, and with a sickening pop crunch, Rollins went silent. I screamed and emptied my clip into the creature's back. It barely flinched. It dropped Rollins's limp body and turned its faceless gaze towards me. I was frozen. This wasn't happening. This was some bad trip, a concussion dream. They are the gnawing ones, Vane said, standing beside me as if we were watching a play. They dwell in the spaces between places. The crash, it thinned the veil. My little invocation did the rest. The creature took a step towards me. The clicking was inside my head now, scrambling my thoughts. Why? I choked out. Freedom requires a transaction, Vane shrugged. The state would never have let me go. But these old gods, they are much more reasonable. They get a feast. I get my life. The creature was 10 feet away. I could smell it, a mix of wet earth, spoiled meat, and something coppery, like old blood. So this was your plan all along. I spat, tears of terror and rage mixing with the rain on my face. Crash the bus, feed them the others. Vane's serene mask finally slipped. A flicker of confusion. Crash. Deputy, I didn't crash the bus. He pointed a long, pale finger past the creature, towards the tree line where the prisoners had fled. He did. Standing there, at the edge of the darkness, was Jessup, the mountain of a man. But he was changing. His massive frame was shifting. His skin was splitting along the seams of his prison jumpsuit, not bleeding, but peeling back like old wallpaper. Underneath wasn't muscle and bone, but the same slick, pallid flesh as the clicking horror standing before me. His face was slack, his eyes vacant, and his mouth was opening into that same vertical, needle-filled slit. He hadn't been escaping. He'd been going home. The final, gut-wrenching twist of the knife. Vane had summoned these things, but one of them had already been on the bus with us, wearing a man's suit, waiting for the signal. It had caused the crash. It had herded its own kind like cattle to the slaughter. The creature that was once Jessup let out a chittering call. The one in front of me responded. Vane looked at me, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of genuine fear in his dead lake eyes. His plan had a variable he hadn't accounted for. He had offered a feast, but he was part of the menu, too. The old gods were, apparently, very hungry. It would seem, Vane whispered, his voice trembling, that my invitation has been rescinded. The 2 creatures, one born of nightmare, one wearing the skin of a man, closed in on us. The clicking filled the world, a horrifying symphony for our final moments. I looked at the melted cuffs on the ground, at Vane's terrified face, and I realized the true horror wasn't the monsters in the woods. It was the fact that the monster next to me was just the appetizer, and I was dessert. The last thing I heard was the wet, tearing sound of Silas Vane beginning to scream, a sound that was quickly drowned out by the gnawing.